This is an example video for the topic, Finding the Roots of a Quadratic Equation with Leading Coefficient 1.
When we see a quadratic equation like this, we can rewrite it by factoring it. But where do these numbers here, -6 and +1, come from? To think about this, let's work backwards. Let's start with our factored version, multiply these two binomials together, and then see what we get. Using the FOIL technique, we'll first multiply w times w to get w squared. Next we'll multiply w times 1 to get plus w. Next we multiply this -6 times w, and that gives us -6w. And finally, we multiply this -6 times 1 to get -6. This is what it looks like when we multiply these two binomials together. We can simplify this by combining these two middle terms to get w squared plus 1 minus 6w minus 6, which can also be simplified further to equal w squared minus 5w minus 6. So where did each of these numbers come from? The w squared came from our first two terms multiplied together. The minus 6 came from our last two terms multiplied together, minus 6 and 1. And the minus 5w came from 1 minus 6, or these two terms added together. So if we wanted to work backwards, we could think about what are two numbers that would multiply to this number, -6, and add to -5. Let's think of all the numbers that multiply to -6. Since -6 is a negative number, we know one of these factors will be negative and one will be positive. Here I've listed all the numbers that multiply to -6. We could do -1 times 6, 1 times -6, -2 times 3, and 2 times -3. Let's see if any of these numbers add up to -5. -1 plus 6 is +5, so that doesn't work. 1 minus 6 is -5, so that works. -2 plus 3 is 1, so that doesn't work. And 2 minus 3 is -1, so that also doesn't work. So we know that the two factors that multiply to -6 and add to -5 are 1 and -6, which are exactly the numbers that we see here in our factored version. Keeping this in mind, we could use these to write our factored version of w plus 1 and w minus 6, which is the same as w minus 6 times w plus 1. Let's do one more example practicing this. Here we have v squared plus 6v plus 8, a quadratic equation. We want to factor it by rewriting it as v plus or minus something times v plus or minus something else. We saw from last time that our first step is to think of all the factors that multiply to this last number, which in our case is 8. So let's list those numbers. Since 8 is a positive number, we know that the two numbers that multiply to 8 will either both be positive or both be negative. Here we've listed all of them: 1 times 8, -1 times -8, 2 times 4, or -2 times -4. Now we have to see if any of these pairs of factors will add up to 6, our middle term. We see that the factors 2 and 4 add up to 6, and so we know that these two are the ones that we want to include in our factored version, +2 and +4. To check our work, we can multiply these factors together and see if we get the same original equation. If we do this, our first term would be v times v, which is v squared. Then we would have v times 4, which is 4v. Next we multiply 2 times v to get plus 2v. And finally our final term is 2 times 4, which is plus 8. If we simplify this, we get v squared plus 6v plus 8, which matches our original equation, telling us that this factorization is correct.